Ladies and gentlemen, we just had the SpaceX IPO, and guess what? The stock did not cross 200. Do you know what that means? That means I'm extremely bullish. Why? Because we are going to get some amazing buying opportunities on SpaceX. Now, I want you to mark your calendar because these dates are going to be the most crucial, important dates in the coming 6 months for when we are going to set up our options strategies for SpaceX stock long term. So strap in, I got a video for you. Make sure you like it, make sure you get subscribed, and comment when you're done watching the video your thoughts. So let's get into it. What's up, everybody? My name is John and I got options. And today we're talking about SpaceX, and we are talking about the lockup dates for SpaceX. So SpaceX is having a staggered lockup period. That means that over different days staggered out, we're going to have 7% here, 7% here, 20% here of the entire float slowly getting unlocked. So let's go through it. Now, over this next 6 months, we're going to have billions of dollars worth of SpaceX stock that's going to become eligible for sale. Now, here's the crazy part. Most investors have absolutely no idea when these shares unlock, how many shares unlock, or what that could mean for the stock price. So we are going to walk through every major lockup date, explain what happens on each one, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you which date I think is the most important and most dangerous for SpaceX shareholders. Now, before we talk about the lockups, we need to understand one thing. The IPO only sold about 5% of SpaceX stock. That means 95% of the company is sitting in the hands of employees, early investors, venture capital firms, insiders, and no one but Elon Musk. So, right now, most of these people cannot sell, but that is about to change. The first major unlock comes after the company's first earnings report. This is the big one. When SpaceX reports earnings for the first time as a public company, approximately 20% of insider shares become eligible for sale. Their earnings date is around sometime in August. So 20% of the entire float is going to get unlocked. Now, what's also interesting about this date is that if the stock is 30% plus above the IPO price of $135, then an additional 10% is going to get unlocked on that date as well. So it probably, maybe, will be 30% of the float that gets unlocked on that date. Now, this does not mean that everybody sells. In fact, most probably won't. But just put yourself in the position of a SpaceX employee who's been sitting on shares for 10 years. You watch the valuation go from a few $1 billion to over $1 trillion. You got a mortgage, you got kids, you got taxes. You want to play with the money. You want to touch the money. So you might want to take some chips off the table. And that's exactly what Wall Street is going to be watching. They're not going to be watching the earnings. They're not going to watch the revenue, Starlink subscribers. They're going to be watching the selling. How much insider selling shows up after the earnings, because that will tell us what people closest to the company really think. Then things get even more interesting, because after the earnings, about 70 days from today, the IPO day, another 7% gets unlocked. And then on 90 days from today, another 7%. 105 days from today, another 7%. 120 days, another 7. 35 days, another 7. So you're going to have this continuous just supply increasing of SpaceX stock. This is going to have massive amounts of pressure from above pushing down on the stock, because we're going to be here buying it, but you have to understand these guys own most of the stock, and these guys are way, way up on their position of SpaceX. There's going to be selling pressure, and we need to look at that selling pressure, and we need to determine, wow, all this selling pressure is coming in, and the stocks, it's holding pretty strong. It's staying about flat. It may even still be going up. We don't know what other contracts come out of SpaceX and XAI with these data centers. We don't know the speed at which Elon is putting together this terafab. All these things are going to factor in on the stock price. And if that buying pressure can keep holding the stock steady while this selling pressure comes in, then that means the stock is really, really strong. And once the selling pressure stops, the stock is going to absolutely explode. Not financial advice. Or maybe this selling pressure is so strong that it pushes the stock down, lower than the IPO price. We might go down to $50, $60, $70 a share. We might get to $1 trillion valuation on SpaceX. And you know what that means? That makes me even more bullish. You know why? Because now we get to buy at this crazy low valuation compared to the IPO price of 1.75 trillion. So either way, I'm going to like it, but it's information. It's a lot of signal that we're going to be getting in this next 6-month period with these lockup dates. So you have to pay attention to these dates right here. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. There's another major unlock tied to the Q3 earnings report, and this one is massive. Approximately 28% of insider shares are going to become eligible for sale. That's 28%. That's almost a third of the entire company on a single day. So that is going to be massive, massive selling pressure. And we need to keep an eye on that because that is signal. That is going to tell us where the company is going. Where is the floor on the stock? Because once all this selling pressure happens, you're going to see the true floor, the true price of SpaceX. Maybe it's around this IPO price. Maybe it's 20, 30, 40% lower than the IPO price. Maybe it's higher than the IPO price. We don't know. But when we get that floor, that is when we start looking at the options. That's when we start looking at the leaps. That's when we start looking at the call debit spreads. All right. It's not in 2 weeks that we start looking at the call debit spreads. No. We're going to wait. We're going to take our time, right? Because we have this lockup period. We have to get through this lockup period. And we're going to pay attention at every one of these dates to see this lockup period and see how the selling is affecting the stock price. All right. So before that 28% though, we're going to have 7%, 7%, 7%, 7, 20, possibly 30. So most of the shares are going to be unlocked before that, but that is going to be a massive last unlock for the insider shares. Now, if the insiders don't sell, again, that's incredibly bullish because that means they see more on the horizon. They see more that's happening with SpaceX. Because think about it. Let's say you're an insider. Let's say you're sitting on $12, $15 million. And let's say you only sell like 1 million, 2 million. You're keeping so much stock off the market that you're going to create this small float because so much insider is not selling, right? Now, the big insiders that I think are going to be selling and they're going to be dumping is the VCs, the venture capitals, because they have a fiduciary duty to return money to their investors, the LPs, the limited partners. Now, some of these VCs, maybe they sell the stock and they give cash to the LPs, or some of them may just give the stock to the LPs and let them make their own decisions. But that's where I think the insider sell pressure is really going to come from. You're going to have some from the employees, but not like you're going to see it from the VCs. So Wall Street will notice immediately if the selling pressure becomes too much. They're going to be paying attention to this, and we have to pay attention to this. So watch these dates, mark these dates in your calendar, because you are going to want to see what signal comes out of these dates. Is the stock staying flat? Is the stock going up? Is the stock going down? How much is it going down? How fast is it going down? All these things are going to matter. And lastly, roughly 6 months after the IPO, virtually all the remaining eligible insider shares become unlocked. At that point, the market no longer has lockup overhang. No more countdowns, no more waiting, no more wondering. The market can finally focus on the fundamentals, the revenue growth, Starlink, launches, AI infrastructure. This is where we can finally focus on the fundamentals of SpaceX. That's the real story, because if SpaceX continues executing, if Starlink keeps growing, if the AI compute business keeps ramping, if revenue keeps accelerating, these lockup dates may end up becoming some of the best buying opportunities investors ever get. So let me know in the comments below, if SpaceX drops 20, 30, even 40% because of lockup fears, are you buying or are you running for the hills? What are you doing? As always, this is not financial advice, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you like the video if you liked it. And comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Are you buying? Are you looking at the options? Personally, I'm looking at the option chain. I'm going to be looking at these leaps because my long-term vision, I think in as little as a couple years, we're looking at a $5-6 trillion company. That's just me, not financial advice. But stay healthy, stay wealthy, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.